Australia is expected to join US President Joe Biden's global pledge to drastically reduce methane emissions over the next decade. The Albanese government will attend the UN COP27 climate change conference in Egypt next month to show its commitment to meet the aspiration, as the government calls it. Australia's livestock sector is aiming to be carbon neutral by 2030, according to Meat and Livestock Australia, but will likely not be required by legislation to meet targets. One avenue that it's hoped will help meet that pledge involves an Australian company called Sea Forest, based in Tasmania. Sea Forest grows a type of seaweed that it then produces into livestock feed. In simple terms, the seaweed interacts with the digestive system in cattle to reduce the methane emissions. Tell us more about this. Let's bring in Sam Elsom. He's the co-founder and chief executive at Sea Forest. Sam, thanks for your time. Just explain to our viewers how does the technology work? I said it in simple terms there, but can you give us a bit more detail?
Yeah, so the technology was established by the CSIRO back in 2016 when they were feeding 30 different varieties of seaweed to livestock to see the impact that it would have on methane production. And they found that the seaweed that we grow in Tasmania called asparagopsis could virtually eliminate methane emissions from a tiny dietary inclusion. And essentially the way it works is that the seaweed disrupts the enzymatic pathway that would lead to the production of methane and the final stages of digestion, and in fact divert that energy which would have been lost to a greenhouse gas and into energy it uses to grow or produce more milk. So we have a positive environmental outcome coupled with a more greater productivity for farmers.
So a greater productivity in terms of the cattle, the livestock's own health, is that right?
Yeah, so livestock that we're seeing in, for example, beef cattle can grow up to 20% faster over that same time period. So it's a reduction in feed costs really for the farmer. Or in the case of milk, the animals are eating less pasture and producing the same amount of milk, so improved feed efficiency.
Yeah, so one of the issues that was raised, in fact, by the former Deputy Prime Minister, Barnaby Joyce, a farmer himself, he was saying, what about the scale? How can you use this technology across a continent as vast as ours with so many head of cattle? What's your reaction to that?
So I think, we've got to couple this with the technology was established in 2016. Sea Forest is a company that's 4 years old, and in that short period of time, we've been able to establish sufficient supply to feed 100,000 head of cattle today with assets that could support 2 million cattle on feed every day. This is a new and exciting technology, but it's also a native seaweed, which gives Australia a geographical advantage on the rest of the world. So we do think that we can get a significant portion of our livestock on this feed supplement and deliver meaningful emissions reduction. By being able to feed 2 million head of cattle every day, that's about a 5.6 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent being wiped from a national greenhouse gas inventory each year. So, we're at this early stage or start of our journey, if you like. And I think certainly we believe that we could reduce the emissions from all Australia's livestock.
And as you said earlier, for the farmers, it's a compelling proposition if it reduces their own cost in terms of feed. Have you had discussions with Meat and Livestock Australia in terms of trying to get this as broadly as possible?
We have. I've spoken many times to Jason Strong and others at MLA. I believe that there is good, strong support, and we have some research that we're doing collaboratively. I think that, I think that mostly this is a technology that is established by CSIRO that is now being commercialised in Australia, that has a huge global competitive advantage that we can give to our Australian farmers, particularly in the eve of us joining the global methane pledge. So I think we have to look at this as an opportunity rather than as a hindrance because of the reasons that I mentioned there.
Indeed. And so the MLA, the Meat and Livestock Australia, they've already committed to carbon neutral by 2030, if I'm correct on that. So do you think they can achieve that with the likes of the technology that your company provides, Sam?
I think they can't get there without the technology that we're providing. So feed supplements will play an absolutely critical role in MLA, or the beef and dairy production, achieving carbon neutrality.
But with no reduction in the head of cattle.
No reduction in the head of cattle required. Yeah, the comments from Minister Littleproud and others saying that we need to reduce herd numbers is, I think, not what it's going to come to.
Sam Elsom, Chief Executive of Sea Forest, appreciate your time. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.